Ladies and gentlemen, you see, sometimes the greatest blessing in your life doesn't come wrapped in a ribbon. It comes wrapped in loss, in pain, in what feels like heartbreak. But let me tell you something, Queen. When that evil man walked out, when God removed what was never supposed to stay, you didn't lose, you gained. You just didn't see it yet. See, God don't always shout. Sometimes he whispers, sometimes he removes. And in that silence, in that stillness, that's where the blessing begins. When he left, the manipulation broke. The confusion started to fade. You started to think for yourself again. You remembered your voice, your strength, your vision. And baby girl, that's not just healing. That's heaven knocking. That peace you're feeling now, that's not an accident. That's divine. That's God saying, this is what I wanted for you all along. You see, you were never meant to walk in chains. You were meant to soar. But sometimes the cage looks like love. And it ain't until the door swings open and the devil walks out that you realize you were the blessing all along. And when you start smiling again, when you look in the mirror and see joy, not just survival, that's not makeup. That's not fashion. That's God's grace. That's what happens when the weight of sin and pain lifts off your shoulders. Don't mourn what God moved. Celebrate what he's about to do. Because now, the people who come into your life, they don't drain you, they lift you. They don't use you, they respect you. They speak life, not fear. You're not lost, baby. You're redirected. That purpose, that fire inside you, it's waking up again. You're not walking blind. You're walking in faith. You're healing faster than you thought, laughing louder than you thought, loving deeper than you ever have, because now you know what love isn't. God had to clear the room to set the stage. He had to remove the counterfeit before he released the promise. So don't you dare go back. Don't you dare look over your shoulder. You've been chosen, protected, and positioned. Now walk like it. When a woman is under the influence of an evil man, her sense of reality becomes distorted. She begins to question her own thoughts, her own instincts. Decisions that once came easily now feel like minefields. She's second-guessing herself constantly because manipulation isn't always loud, it's subtle. It creeps in through guilt trips, silent treatments, twisted truths. Over time, her inner voice, the one God gave her, is drowned out by the voice of someone who never had her best interests at heart. It becomes a cycle where she's made to feel small so he can feel powerful. Her confidence fades, her joy dims, and she starts to believe that maybe this is all she deserves. But when that man leaves, when he's finally gone, something starts to shift. At first, it's quiet. There's a stillness, a kind of shock, even grief. But underneath it, something holy is stirring. Clarity begins to return. She notices how much she was bending, breaking, and shrinking just to keep the peace. And with each passing day, the fog of manipulation starts to lift. She starts to remember her worth, not the version he told her, but the truth God always saw. She begins to trust herself again. Her voice becomes steady. She starts asking, what do I want? What do I feel? And the answers come. No longer filtered through someone else's control, her thoughts are her own. The chains of emotional and spiritual control fall off one by one. Freedom doesn't just mean he's gone. It means she can breathe again. She can dream again. That's when you know something sacred is happening. That's not just recovery. That's restoration. That's God stepping in and saying, now let me show you who you really are. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from silence, but from release. When an evil man finally leaves a woman's life, what follows isn't just quiet. It's sacred stillness. It's as if the air itself changes. The chaos that once lived in her home, in her heart, in her mind, begins to dissolve. The tension that she carried in her shoulders, in her stomach, in her chest starts to loosen. She no longer has to tiptoe around moods, no longer has to prepare herself for another emotional ambush. That constant alertness, that feeling of walking on eggshells begins to fade. She notices it in the little things first. The house feels different. The quiet isn't heavy anymore. It's healing. She can sit alone without fear creeping in. Her phone rings and her stomach doesn't drop. It doesn't drop. She no longer waits for the next argument, the next accusation, the next moment where she's made to feel like she's too much or not enough. The drama, the mind games, the emotional roller coaster, it all stops. And what's left is a deep, unfamiliar calm. For the first time in a long time, she can breathe fully. She can sleep through the night without that lingering dread. Her spirit, once weighed down by confusion and anxiety, begins to rise. That peace doesn't mean everything is fixed, but it means the war is over. It's the beginning of her healing, the space God uses to pour back into her. Her laughter starts to return light and genuine. Her thoughts feel clearer. Her energy isn't spent on survival. It's now available for growth, for hope, for joy. That's the kind of peace that signals something divine is unfolding. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of God wrapping her in stillness she forgot she deserved. When a woman has been torn down by the words, actions, and energy of an evil man, her reflection becomes unfamiliar. She stops recognizing the queen in the mirror. Her worth gets chipped away in small, deliberate pieces. Every insult masked as a joke, every compliment that felt conditional, every moment she was made to feel like love had to be earned. She starts believing that her value is tied to how much she can tolerate, how quiet she can stay, how small she can make herself just to keep the peace. That's not love, that's erasure. But when that man is gone, something begins to rise. Slowly, at first, a whisper, a flicker. A memory of who she used to be. She stands a little taller without realizing. She looks at old pictures and remembers the fire in her eyes. She starts dressing for herself again, speaking up without apology, setting boundaries without guilt. Her no becomes firm. Her yes becomes sacred. She starts believing she deserves more, not because someone finally told her, but because she remembered what God already said about her. There's power in rediscovery. She begins to affirm herself in the quiet moments. I am enough. I am worthy of love, of respect, of peace. And this time, she actually believes it. The lies that once echoed in her mind begin to lose their volume. In their place, truth settles in. She doesn't need validation from anyone who tried to dim her light. She knows now deep in her bones that she is not hard to love. She was just loving the wrong person. This rise in self-worth is not arrogance. It's alignment. It's her spirit syncing back up with heaven's original design. She walks different, talks different, because once she sees her own value, there's no going back. Sometimes what feels like rejection is really redirection. And when an evil man leaves a woman's life, it often marks the turning point where God steps in and says, now, let's go where I was trying to lead you all along. It doesn't always look like a blessing at first. It may look like heartbreak, like confusion, like standing at a crossroads with no map in hand. But deep within that moment is a shift, one that moves her from being stuck in survival mode to walking toward her purpose. Divine redirection isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet pull, a door that gently closes, an opportunity that presents itself when she least expects it. The plans she thought she needed begin to fall away, and in their place, a new vision starts to form. It's something deep within her, something she can reclaim because she was always worthy of it. This blossoming joy is more than just fleeting happiness. It's the deep, abiding sense of contentment and peace that comes when she realizes that, despite the pain she's endured, there is still beauty in the world, still love, still hope, and it all begins within her heart. For a woman who has been trapped in an unhealthy relationship, toxic cycles become a part of her reality. They start as subtle patterns, little signs that something isn't quite right. But over time, they become normal, even expected. The constant emotional roller coaster, the highs followed by devastating lows, the manipulative behavior, the gaslighting, all these things build a cycle that she starts to believe she deserves. The arguments that never resolve, the apologies that come with no change, the promises that are always broken, these things keep her tethered to a version of love that isn't love at all. But when that evil man leaves, it's like the grip these toxic cycles once had on her begins to loosen. At first, it feels like there's a void because she's so used to the chaos. She doesn't know what to do with the silence. She may feel lost for a moment, unsure how to navigate a life free from manipulation and control. But as the days pass, she begins to notice something important. The cycles are broken. The patterns that kept her bound no longer have power over her. The emotional triggers that once controlled her reactions start to lose their grip. She begins to see things clearly for the first time. The behaviors that once seemed acceptable now appear as they truly are, destructive, hurtful, and not a reflection of who she is. She realizes that her value is not tied to how much she can endure, how much she can tolerate, or how much she can fix. She sees the destructive pattern of chasing love that isn't real. She understands that it's not love that needs fixing, it's her own understanding of what she deserves. She breaks free from the cycle, and in that freedom, she creates space for new, healthier patterns to take root. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, a remarkable shift happens. Something deep within her begins to stir. For so long, she may have felt like she was simply existing, just surviving the day-to-day, caught in a whirlwind of emotional turbulence and doubt. The purpose that once burned bright within her had been dimmed, overshadowed by the toxicity and the demands of someone who didn't honor her true worth. Dreams that once seemed within reach now felt distant, unimportant, as if they had been buried beneath layers of pain and compromise. But when the storm clears, something profound happens. A quiet whisper rises from within, something that had been silenced for far too long. Her heart starts to remember what it means to have a calling, to feel driven by something beyond just getting by. The pieces of herself that were lost in the struggle begin to fall into place. She recalls the passion she once had, the aspirations, the hopes, the gifts that were waiting to be nurtured. She remembers her own voice, her own desires, and the purpose she was always meant to fulfill. In the absence of the constant chaos, she feels a renewed sense of direction. The distraction is gone, and in its place, she can hear the still, small voice of God calling her back to what she was always meant to do. The dreams she had once let go of begin to feel possible again. She is no longer afraid to step into her power, to pursue what truly sets her soul on fire. It's as if the divine spark within her is reigniting, and with each new step she takes, she walks closer to the woman God always intended her to be, whole, confident, and living out her purpose. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, the void that's created isn't just a space of emptiness, it's a sacred opening for new people to enter. These aren't just any people, though. These are the ones who bring light, who bring truth, who lift her up instead of dragging her down. For so long, she may have been surrounded by toxic energy, relationships that were either one-sided or draining, where her worth was questioned and her love was never truly valued. But when the dark clouds clear, God sends new connections that feel different. These people don't require her to shrink, to compromise, or to ignore her own needs for the sake of someone else's comfort. They see her, not for what they can take, but for who she truly is. At first, it might feel strange. She may have grown accustomed to the isolation, to the pain that came with trying to keep toxic relationships afloat. But as these new people enter her life, they start to show her what healthy love, respect, and friendship truly look like. They don't judge her past, they celebrate her growth. They see her strength, her wisdom, and the beauty in her scars. They don't just fill a space, they enhance it. These are the people who make her feel seen, heard, and valued. They support her dreams, encourage her healing, and walk with her as she rediscovers herself. These relationships are different because they are rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. No games, no manipulation. Just real connections built on trust and kindness. She realizes that the people who enter her life now are not just filling the gap left by the toxic man. They're showing her what it truly means to be loved and appreciated. And they are walking with her into a future filled with new beginnings. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, something powerful begins to emerge from within her, strength she may not have even known was there. For so long, she had been hiding parts of herself, parts that were battered and bruised by the weight of manipulation, control, and constant emotional upheaval. She had learned to shrink, to stay silent, to ignore the voice inside her that screamed for freedom. But once the toxicity is gone, the space for her strength to rise becomes clear. It doesn't happen overnight. At first, it might feel fragile, like taking tentative steps toward reclaiming something lost. But day by day, as the emotional wounds heal and the shadows of fear recede, her inner power begins to reveal itself. It shows up in the small, quiet moments when she chooses to put herself first, when she makes decisions based on what's best for her, not out of obligation or guilt, but out of self-respect. It shows in the boundaries she sets without hesitation, in the no that is firm but peaceful. It is visible in the way she stands a little taller, the way she speaks with more conviction, the way she no longer apologizes for her presence or her needs. Her strength becomes visible in the choices she makes that reflect her worth. She begins to trust herself again. She steps into spaces that once seemed too big or too intimidating, knowing now that she is enough. It is the quiet resilience that flows from within, the recognition that she can face whatever comes next because she has survived before. And in that survival, she has transformed. She no longer sees herself as broken. She sees herself as powerful. Her strength doesn't just lie in what she has endured. It lies in the courage to rise again and again with grace, with dignity, and with unshakable faith in her own ability to overcome. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, the emotional storm that once raged within her begins to calm. For so long, her world had been a whirlwind, constant turbulence, unpredictable outbursts, and the kind of chaos that keeps her on edge. The storm didn't just exist in the external world. It lived inside her too. The anxiety, the fear of what would happen next, the confusion of never knowing what version of reality she was supposed to accept. This was the everyday noise that drowned out peace. She had become used to the storm, thinking that it was simply a part of her existence, something to endure. But once that toxic energy is gone, something miraculous happens. The noise begins to fade. The fear that once gripped her heart softens, and for the first time in a long while, there is quiet. It isn't a silence filled with dread or the anxiety of waiting for the next confrontation. It's a peace she's never truly known. The kind of peace that seeps into her soul, calm and steady. It's the kind of stillness that allows her to breathe fully, without looking over her shoulder or fearing the next emotional explosion. As the storm quiets, she begins to find clarity. Thoughts that once felt fragmented now come together in a cohesive rhythm. Her heart, once weighed down by uncertainty and turmoil, starts to find its natural beat again. She doesn't have to keep guarding herself, doesn't have to stay in fight or flight mode. The storm within her settles, allowing her to hear the voice of God more clearly, to trust in her own inner wisdom, and to finally live in the moment without the constant worry of what might come next. The emotional turbulence has given way to a gentle peace, and it is in this peace that she starts to rebuild, stronger, clearer, and more certain of her path. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, her faith begins to shift from something that was perhaps once shaken to something that grows deeply rooted. For so long, she may have questioned her worth, doubted her ability to rise, or wondered where God was in the midst of all the pain. The constant emotional turmoil might have made it difficult to feel his presence, to trust that he had a plan for her beyond the chaos. But once the toxic force is removed, her faith doesn't just return. It strengthens, it matures, and it becomes something solid, something unshakable. Listen. In the absence of the man who tore at her spirit, she starts to see God in a new light. She realizes that he was always there, in the smallest moments, in the quiet whispers, even in the hardest day. Her faith deepens because she understands now that he wasn't absent. He was protecting her, guiding her through the storm, even when it felt like she was walking alone. As the weight of fear and uncertainty lifts, she begins to recognize the love that was always present, even in her pain. She starts to trust that God has been holding her, even in the times when she felt lost or broken. Her relationship with God becomes more intimate. The prayers that once felt like pleas for survival now feel like conversations with a friend who knows her heart. She doesn't just seek comfort, she seeks purpose, seeking his guidance with a clear mind and an open heart. She learns that faith isn't about avoiding the storms, but trusting that God will walk her through them. And in this deeper trust, she finds peace, knowing that he has always been her strength and that with him, nothing is impossible. Her faith is no longer a fleeting hope. It's a firm foundation that holds her steady, no matter what comes next. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, there's often a moment when the pieces start to fall into place and God's timing becomes undeniable. For so long, she may have questioned why things had to unfold the way they did. The pain, the heartache, the brokenness, it all seemed unfair, like a storm she didn't deserve. She wondered why she couldn't find peace sooner, why she had to endure the weight of that relationship for as long as she did. But as the fog begins to clear, she starts to see something greater at work, a divine orchestration that she couldn't see while she was caught in the middle of it all. It becomes clear that God's timing was never wrong. In hindsight, she realizes that the relationship she thought she needed was never meant to be the end of her story. The separation, though painful, was actually a turning point. God was protecting her from something that would have continued to break her spirit. The timing of it all, though it may have felt like a detour at the time, was exactly what was needed to realign her life with his purpose. As the days pass and the healing begins, She understands that God's delays were never denials. The relationship that once felt like a dead end was merely a step in her journey. His timing allowed her to grow stronger, to trust in herself, and to fully embrace the love and peace he had waiting for her all along. She sees that had she left any earlier, she might not have learned the lessons she needed to learn or found the strength she now carries. God's timing was not only perfect, it was the foundation of her transformation. She can now look back and see that his plan was always unfolding, even when she couldn't understand it. When the toxic presence of an evil man leaves a woman's life, something powerful begins to shift within her. Healing accelerates. For so long, she had been living with wounds that never fully healed, scars that were covered but never properly tended to. The emotional weight, the unresolved pain, the lingering effects of manipulation and abuse, it all took its toll, slowing down the healing process. But when that negative energy is removed, her body, mind, and spirit suddenly find the space to breathe, to rest, and to restore. At first, healing may seem slow as old wounds surface and painful memories rise to the surface. But with each day that passes as she embraces her newfound freedom, the pace picks up. What once felt like an endless journey of recovery now begins to unfold more quickly. She starts to notice small changes. She sleeps more peacefully, her mind is less clouded with confusion, and her heart begins to feel lighter. Each step she takes feels like progress, like the weight of the past is gradually being lifted from her shoulders. This acceleration in healing is rooted in the fact that she is no longer trying to heal within the confines of a toxic environment. As the noise quiets, as the manipulation and gaslighting fade, her own true voice becomes louder. She no longer has to suppress her emotions or question her reality. The space that was once filled with toxicity is now filled with peace, and this peace allows her to heal in ways she never thought possible. The process may not be linear, but it is swift and certain. Each breakthrough, each moment of clarity speeds up the restoration of her heart, her mind, and her soul. She realizes that her healing was never delayed. It was simply waiting for the right conditions to flourish. And now, those conditions are in place. When an evil man leaves a woman's life, her entire understanding of love begins to shift. For so long, she may have equated love with sacrifice, pain, or the constant need to prove her worth. The kind of love she experienced was often one-sided, manipulative, and conditional. She was taught to believe that love meant giving up pieces of herself, tolerating disrespect, or accepting behavior that never truly honored her. But when that toxic presence is removed, love begins to take on a new shape. It's no longer tied to chaos or conflict. It's no longer about what she can give to someone who can never truly love her back. Instead, love begins to be redefined as something pure, as something that lifts her up rather than drags her down. She begins to understand that love doesn't require her to lose herself. It doesn't demand that she silence her needs, her desires, or her voice. Love is something that allows her to be fully herself without apology. It doesn't diminish her, it amplifies her. For the first time, she begins to realize that love is mutual, kind, and unconditional. It isn't about proving worthiness. It's about receiving and giving in equal measure. She understands now that love is a partnership, not a power struggle. It's about respect, care, and understanding, things she had never truly experienced before. As her self-worth rises, her capacity to receive and give love in healthy ways grows as well. She no longer settles for the love that keeps her small or makes her feel inadequate. Instead, she holds space for a love that cherishes her, supports her, and allows her to flourish. She now understands that love, in its purest form, is a reflection of the love she has for herself, and that above all, she deserves to be loved in ways that honor her soul.